There's a premise in learning all the Parshios in Chumash. It's a premise that we need to be mindful of anytime we study, and in particular when we study personalities that are found in the Chumash. This mindset, this Hashkafas Olam, is brought down in Rav Rei's Sefer Merosh Shirim, where he says that the whole point of the Torah is to teach us L'lamed et Yehudi in source 2 et haderech asher yelech ba, the path in which we should walk, v'et hamaseh asher yaseh, and how to behave as people. He says Kayotze bazeh gam hamaorot hamuturim b'mikra lo ba l'saper ma'asim min havar. The stories that we find in the Chumash are not just an account of some historical event, but rather is a directive on how we need to live our lives at every moment. And he says, therefore, when we come to stories, when we come to descriptions, we have to come with a certain amount of intensity. And not just to, glance over it, I learned this in 3rd grade. But rather we have to learn about it in a deep way. And and not only are we obligated to learn and to analyze the personalities found within, and this is the Chiddush. When we look at these personalities, we have to ask ourselves, where am I in terms of these personalities? How can I grow from learning about them? How can I mirror my life based on what they have accomplished? That is our challenge. We have to be able, lakir et atzmo, larich et matzavo ruchani be'etem l'nidrosh mimenu. Where am I philosophically, religiously, in comparison to these individuals? How can I improve my life? How can I grow? My friends, this is really a tremendous challenge in learning. And he notes in the 3rd paragraph in 2 in particular, and the stories that were beginning, the Parshios Shavavim, Parshios beginning with Shemot, Va'era, Bo, B'Shalach, the Parshios which deal with Yetziat Mitzrayim, because a person has to say, Chayav Adam lo teratzvo, Kilahu Yatzam Mitzrayim. We're obligated to see ourselves as if we left Egypt. So the events that happen, the personalities connected with these events, are ways to help us extricate ourselves from our own Mitzrayim, from our own narrow straits, in order for us to grow, in order for us to be able to reach Yisrael Mishpatim, to be able to reach Mamad Har Sinai. It's with this in mind, my friends, that I'd like to try, with the help of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, to analyze, and as we always say with this disclaimer, by no means, a total depth analysis, but some insight into a personality whom we do not study as much. The personalities of this week's Parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu, Sipora, Yocheved, Miriam, we learn a tremendous amount about, or perhaps we should learn more about. There's one personality who I think we learn very little about, who I think can offer us a tremendous amount of insight into this mirroring effect into our own lives, into who and what we can become potentially. Let's take a look at the text itself. Chumash tells us, source 1, that a man from the house of Levi took a daughter of Levi, and she gave birth to a son, and she saw that he was good. The Medrash said the whole house lit up. And the Torah tells us she hid him for 3 months. When she could no longer hide him, she made for him a wicker basket, and she smeared some clay and pitch on it, and she placed the child in it, and she placed it among the reeds in the bank of the river, and his sister Miriam stood from afar to see what was going to happen. That's the background. Enters our scene, the asterisk in source 5. Paro's daughter went down to bathe by the river, and always when we translate, we're not being exact, and that's why it's so frustrating using in English. The Hebrew phrase which is noted in source 3 is lirchotz al hayor, which literally means to bathe not by the river, but rather on the river. And her maidens walked along the river. She saw the basket among the reeds, and she sent her maidservant, and she took it. She opened it and saw him, the child, and behold, a youth was crying. She took pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrew boys." The sister then said, "Shall I go fetch somebody to nurse the child?" She said, "Go." She brings her own mother, and then she offered to pay him. The woman took the boy and nursed him. The boy grew up, and she brought him to the daughter of Paro, and he was a son to her. And she called his name Moshe, for she said, "Min hamayim mishisihu," for I drew him from the water. That's the text. Now, obviously, there are a tremendous amount of questions to be asked here. The overall question, it's the question I'd like to struggle with today, is what possesses